Team USA falls 113 to 111 to Germany. They are out of the World Cup. They will play Canada for a third place trophy. I may have had to swallow my vomit no less than 8 times throughout the game. We'll talk about why next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. If you want to become an everydayer here on Locked On Knicks, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and hit that notifications bell so you never miss an episode. And be sure to do the same on your audio podcast platform of choice. And if you want to text with Alex and I and get our latest thoughts on the Knicks and share your latest thoughts on the Knicks, you can now do so with Subtext. Just hit the link in the description. It is now the correct one. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And we are talking the failure of Team USA as they bow out early in yet another World Cup. Haven't won now since nearly a decade ago in 2014, losing this one 113 to 111 to Germany in a game where they at points got it under control, actually led at halftime, but we're down by 10 early. We're down by 10 to 12 for most of the third and fourth quarter. And ultimately just didn't have enough defensively to win this game. As Germany rained threes, this guy who I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of before today, Andreas Obst, looked like a prime Klay Thompson, hitting 4 threes, also 8 free throws, 24 points, 6 assists, absolutely lighting up Team USA. Franz Wagner was also pretty unstoppable. He had 22. Daniel Tice, unfortunately, this is really unfortunate, was the best center on the floor in a game featuring Mr. All-NBA, Mr. Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr. That's not great. That is not what you want if you're Team USA. Team USA, this is a fun fact that came out, became just the third team in the World Cup to give up 113 points or more. Keep in mind, these are 40-minute games. The other two are Lebanon and South Sudan. And despite all that, they almost won because that is how much talent Team USA has offensively. But the fundamental flaws in roster construction, again, plague Team USA. And I want to, before we get into the nitty gritty and we talk Jalen Brunson, we talk Josh Hart, we talk Anthony Edwards, we talk all these guys' performance. I kind of want to take a big picture view. So we've known since about 2004, right? I mean, heck, you could say even we knew earlier, right? Like there was a long stretch where college players were good enough for the U.S. to win Olympic title after Olympic title. And the only team with really any hopes of competing with them in any meaningful way was the Soviet Union, which of course was not a country, it was a conglomerate of multiple countries. And basically all that great Eastern European talent in the NBA that's there now, imagine if they were all playing on one team. So that was the bulk of the history of the United States basketball. You flash forward to the 1980s, all of a sudden, there's a little bit of doubt there saying, like, hey, we're losing or we're having closer games. Maybe sending 18 to 22-year-olds to play against grown men isn't quite good enough anymore. I know what we should do. Let's allow NBA players to come in and compete and play in both the Olympics and the World Championship. And then you get the dream team and you beat everyone by 40 points. The Soviet Union breaks up. There are no meaningful challenges to the United States supremacy for about 8 years, right through the 2000 Olympics. Of course, Vince Carter caps that era off with the dunk of death. You flash forward to 2002, if I remember correctly, I think the World Cup that year was in Indianapolis, and the U.S., despite that home court advantage, manages to finish 6th. And this big blinking red light goes off and says, oh, crap, we better get better guys playing at the World Cup. All right, let's load up. Let's get some Hall of Famers in there. Allen Iverson, no, well, not Stephon Marbury. Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan, a bunch of young future stars. LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade. Oh, wait, that's still not enough? We lost to Puerto Rico. Argentina wrecked us. Lithuania drained 3 after 3 after 3 in our face. All right, let's bring in the big guns. Mike Krzyzewski, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Oh, no, we lost to Greece. All right, redeem team, guys. We really got to get this together. Oh, no. we barely did it. We pulled it out. We beat a really tough Spain team, right? I say all that to say, sorry, that went on a little longer than I wanted it to, but I say all that to say that the rest of the world, at least in the context of FIBA basketball, has been caught up to the United States, or has been mostly caught up to the United States for a while, right? Everyone, I still see this notion on Twitter that, oh, if we had just sent our A team, there wouldn't have been any issues. We sent our A team for the Olympics 2 years ago. They barely escaped a pretty mediocre France team, right? The difference is the chemistry that these other teams have, the years and years and years of continuity they have playing together, which I think in particular you see on the U.S. defensively. It was something our friend Benji Ritholtz noted on Twitter, but to play the style of defense they're playing, which is switch everything essentially, you need great communication, you need great connectivity. The United States didn't really have that. And compared to other nations where you see the chemistry is seamless, but these are guys who by and large have grown up playing together. And yes, the U.S. has some of that, right? Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, they all grew up playing rep after rep after rep together. So you can't say that's an issue there. But the team as a whole did not grow up playing together. Austin Reeves hadn't even really met any of these guys before joining Team USA. So even when the U.S. sends their A team, they still have issues because of that and because of the FIBA rules. And these are the rules that every other nation in the world grew up playing on. It's a smaller court, which greatly minimizes the U.S.'s advantage in terms of speed and athleticism, which is still massive and significant, but it does not show up on these courts because of that rule, because of the defensive 3 seconds, because of the ability, to a lesser extent, but a little bit, to take the ball off the rim. And all of these are the rules that all these European players grew up playing under, and they're rules that the U.S. has to adjust to. I mean, we saw it late in this game where Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't think you can do this in the NBA either, but he hit the backboard hard and he seemed confused when it was called a goaltend, and Steve Kerr seemed confused when that was called a goaltend. And it's those little adjustments that slowly but surely even the playing field. So let's just throw out that what I think is a false notion that, oh, all of a sudden the rest of the world has caught up. No, they've been caught up for 22 years now for the most part. And the U.S., when they have a golden era of talent, right? Kobe, LeBron, Wade, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, that whole group, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and all those guys go, they were still just barely able to win. And when we send less talent than that, we have major issues in these world tournaments. We're fresh off a world championship where we finished 7th, right? And now there's this shock and awe when we're probably going to finish 3rd, maybe 4th. It's no sure thing that they're going to come out and beat the Canadians on Sunday. Or maybe the game's Saturday. I don't know. Anyways, besides the point, there shouldn't be shock and awe, I'm saying, when they lose these games. But the U.S. greatly exacerbated these issues with their roster construction. And we will talk about that in just a sec on Locked On Knicks. But first, we got to shout out our friends over at FanDuel, because football's back, baby. So get ready for an NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. I told you yesterday to bet the over on Sky Moore receiving yards. That didn't work out, but if you want to continue to ride with me, I'm rocking with my New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys, post Kellen Moore, going to be a failing institution, not going to have the offensive infrastructure. No faith in Mike McCarthy to get it done. No faith in Dak Prescott. I think the Giants are on the up and up, so I would take the Giants to go and win that game, and I hope you do the same on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All righty. Let's talk U.S. Germany. A 113-111 loss for Team USA. And as noted earlier, the issue was defense. And this was a failure by both Grant Hill and Steve Kerr in building this U.S. roster out. There were not enough bigs and there was not enough defense. And the U.S. didn't even use the bigs they had. I was not stunned because they hadn't been really trusting him all tournament, but I was frustrated that there wasn't any inclination to try Walker Kessler in this game, who is very young, but was also probably the second or third best rim protector in all of basketball last year. And the United States didn't really want to give him a chance. And I understand why, right? Clogs up the middle of the floor offensively, not super physical defensively, but this was not a team, as we've noted, that had a Nikola Vucevic or a Jonas Valanciunas that could just kind of bully Kessler one-on-one, right? If Germany wanted to run their offense through Daniel Theis trying to post up on Walker Kessler, that would have been just fine. And I can pretty much guarantee Germany does not score 113 points in that scenario. Instead, Steve Kerr wanted to prioritize playing small, playing with speed, and it didn't work against this German team because they are freaking huge, right? They don't necessarily have that, again, one monster in the middle, but they have Theis, who's big. They had Voigtman, who's another center who's big. Mo Wagner, who's big and physical. Thyman, another person I did not know existed. He was 4 for 4. He was 2 for 2 from the line. Wagner was 3 for 5. Voigtman was 3 for 4. Theis was 10 for 15. Franz Wagner, who was playing the 3, but is freaking 6'10 out there. 7 of 18, 3 for 10, 5 for 6, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. You're getting my point. The team was just too small, and we have Paolo freaking Banchero out there playing center. And look, I think 4 or 5 years into Paolo's career, right, he is going to be able to take advantage of that matchup offensively. You know what? Let me reframe that. He can take advantage of that matchup offensively now, but it was a total failure by Steve Kerr, and stunningly, this entire brilliant U.S. staff that featured Ty Lue, that featured Eric Spoelstra. By the way, this is an aside. I really wonder, is the result different if Spoelstra's the head coach instead of Steve Kerr? Maybe if Ty Lue's the head coach instead of Steve Kerr? Can we say that those two guys are quite possibly better defensive tacticians than Steve Kerr is? Maybe. I don't know. Hard to question the guy who's won 4 championships, no matter who he's had on his roster. But that is, and I think something that may actually be true. But anyways, Kerr was prioritizing switchability, and he's prioritizing firepower, right? But there are diminishing returns to playing these score-first guys, right? And unfortunately, Jalen Brunson is included in that. In fact, he might be the best example of it, right? Because on the Knicks, where you have this incredible defensive infrastructure, right? Where you have Mitchell Robinson, who's only goal on the floor, who's like essentially, you know when you play pickup football with your friends growing up, and you have a guy who's automatic quarterback. Mitchell Robinson is the NBA's version of automatic defense, right? He's out there for defense and offensive rebounding. That is it. And that gives you an opportunity to play an automatic quarterback in Jalen Brunson. And it becomes actually a necessity to have a high volume, hyper efficient lead offensive player. And if that guy is a tire fire defensively, that's okay. Honestly, even though Indiana does not have the same infrastructure, the same is true for the Indiana Pacers. In the NBA, you need to score a whole ton of points. And Tyrese Halliburton, he can get that done for them. Anthony Edwards is not a defensive tire fire, but same deal with his offense. You need his offense in the NBA. I can go on and on and on. Austin Reeves is another fantastic example of it, right? You have Anthony Davis, so you get to play Austin Reeves, and he is super duper helpful because on a Lakers team that otherwise is a little bit creaky and a little bit lacking in terms of offensive creativity and not super fluid, what Reeves gives you is absolutely essential. But on a team with all those guys, there are inevitably going to be diminishing returns. And Germany had a bunch of two-way players out there, had a bunch of size out there, had a bunch of physicality out there, had a team that was playing on a string. And the U.S., when you have a bunch of guys who are offensive dynamos, but are utter sieves on the other end, like we saw it all day with freaking Obst, who's not, again, not an NBA player. And I don't think it's because he doesn't want to be in the NBA. It's because he's not an NBA player. Like to my earlier point about the difference between FIBA and the NBA. All the countries in the world, right, compared to the United States, produce 120 NBA players. The United States produces approximately 330 NBA players. The best players in the world, by NBA rules, are still largely American to such a disproportionate extent, it's almost unbelievable. But again, that does not translate over to FIBA play. So you got to be smart, and you got to bring guys who can defend. And for whatever reason, Jaren Jackson Jr., and honestly, I don't put it on Grant Hill that this team was relying on Jaren Jackson Jr. to some extent because he was the defensive player of the year. He's far and away the best rim protector in basketball during the season. And yet, there had to be some alternative options because Jaren Jackson Jr., when everyone's healthy in Memphis, is not a center. And we saw why in this tournament. He is simply not a good enough rebounder. And now they couldn't have brought Steven Adams, but they could have brought Mitchell Robinson. They could have brought Miles Turner. They could have brought Brooke Lopez. We can go on and on and on with this. They could have played Walker Kessler. There were better rebounders. There were bigger guys that they could have put on the floor. But Steve Kerr wanted to prioritize offense over all else. And you saw it in this game. Like, I think Jalen Brunson is such again, unfortunately, him and Austin Reeves and Halliburton, like the three of them are the ultimate microcosms of that idea. Like we saw it again and again with Brunson early in this game, right? Where he came out and he was really aggressive offensively. And he was just missing a couple shots here or there that he would normally make, right? Early in the game. Had a nice assist to Anthony Edwards, then toasted Dennis Schroeder, but got a shot swatted. Was aggressive going to the rim, but missed a close lefty lay. Gave up a three to, what's his name? Obst? Yep, Obst, I guess. Gave up a three to Obst. Came back and hit another three, but then fouled Obst on a three, so he gave it right back. Had a hard baseline drive on Dennis Schroeder, got it back with a layup. Gave up another bucket on the other end. Not getting around a screen. Like we can keep going on and on and on. The same was true for Austin Reeves, right? He gave up a three, came back with a three, gave up an offensive rebound for a layup. And in turn, the U.S. was basically, they spent this whole tournament trading buckets with teams with inferior talent. And Steve Kerr never adjusted either by trying to play more defensively focused lineups. And to me, that meant going bigger and having Walker Kessler play some center or playing big minutes with Jaren Jackson and Bobby Portis out there together. And look, I don't know if that would have made a difference, but the point was it would have been totally untenable with the switch heavy scheme. And I think the U.S. would have been much better off employing a drop coverage and playing Walker Kessler, letting him sink back towards the rim. And like so many teams in the NBA do, being willing to concede mid-range jumper after mid-range jumper because these teams weren't good enough to keep up with the U.S., only hitting twos. The issue in the Lithuania loss was the U.S. gave up too many threes. The issue in this loss to Germany was the U.S. gave up way too many threes. Germany started off, I think, 12 for 23 from behind the line. They only made one of their last 7. It was a late three by Isaac Bonga that was kind of one of the final nails in the coffin in this game for the U.S. But you give up twos instead of threes, I think you would have been able to outscore this German team. Again, Jalen Brunson, we can get a little bit more in depth on him since I got to pinch myself and remember this is Locked On Knicks, not Locked On Team USA. He did some good stuff in this game, right? Like showed off great chemistry with Mikal Bridges, like 1 point penetrated to the middle of the floor, hit Mikal for a little fadeaway. At another time, got middle, hit Mikal for a wing three, hit Mikal backdoor for a dunk. Like it was really fun to watch those two cook together. At one point, he accounted for 10 straight points in the third quarter, 3 via bucket, 6 via bucket, 4 via assist. So that was a lot of fun when he started cooking. But again, that was a stretch where Germany was scoring basically every possession. Josh Hart was really, really good for the U.S., especially in the last 2 minutes of the first quarter. Like he checked out for a few minutes, and because Brandon Ingram, I believe, wasn't healthy enough for this game, he had to come back in really quickly and immediately came back in and made a really nice impact. Had this great offensive rebound and a putback, and then had a front on the other end, like on one of the German bigs to knock it away and force a turnover. Had this beautiful lefty drive, inside spin, finished with the right hand. Had a nice putback in the second half. Hit a three that if the U.S. had come back to win this game would have been one of the pivotal moments when they were down 76-68. And again, it's really good to see him just confidently shooting from distance and shooting well enough from distance. Went right at Daniel Tice for a layup at one point. Again, like Brunson and Hart weren't amazing in this game, but Brunson finished with 15 and 7. Hart finished with 9 points, 5 rebounds, 3 steals, was 4 for 4 from the field. Like those two are far from the United States' biggest issues. But how can the U.S. fix this going forward? And maybe some quick thoughts on the United States against Canada. That next on Locked On Knicks. All right, let's talk the future of the United States basketball. What do they have to emphasize going forward? Rim protection is the number one thing. And again, on paper, Triple J, awesome. They need a center who can do it, whether that is ideally Bam Adebayo or Anthony Davis. If you can't get that tier of guy, maybe it's even Draymond Green, who was really good in that role the last 2 Olympics. Maybe it is Walker Kessler with a little bit more maturity and adding a little bit more strength. Maybe it's someone like Miles Turner who can still give you some floor spacing, but gives you that extra bit of size, right? They need to prioritize rebounding, fours that have a capacity to do that, even guards that have the ability to get involved and do that. And that's ultimately why Josh Hart was on this team, and he helped and he made a difference, but it wasn't enough. And then I guess at point guard, right? Two-way point guard play. You could, I don't even think it was an argument that you go back to that gold medal game against France in 2021. Drew Holiday was pretty easily the U.S.'s most important player on both ends of the floor. And if he is in anywhere close to that form at the end of next season, 15-ish, 16 years into his NBA career, you'll probably want to bring him back, and you want to find two-way guards and guys that are great point of attack defenders, right? Because it is so hard against these teams that just run fantastic offense, right? And put you in really compromising positions defensively. Because we saw down the stretch of this game, like what was Germany going to over and over and over again, right? Pick and roll up top, get Austin Reeves on Dennis Schroeder, and let Schroeder just blow by him and get to the rim. And Germany got bucket after bucket after bucket late, operating out of that. And nearly had another one that the U.S. just saved with a kick ball. If not, Tice would have had a dunk that would have put the U.S. away 20 seconds earlier before they were mercifully had their run ended. So guys like Alex Caruso and Herb Jones, dare I say it, even as soon as this next Olympics, maybe this is going to sound crazy for people. He's going to have to probably take a small step forward to make this a potential reality. But someone like a Quentin Grimes, I think would have been more valuable than Austin Reeves. Maybe even would have been more valuable than Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson. Because again, you are not lacking for scoring, right? If Anthony Edwards in the most important stretches is going to be creating and taking a pull-up three, it doesn't really make a difference if you have Halliburton or Brunson in the corner versus Grimes in the corner. But I can tell you on the other end of the floor, it sure as hell makes a big difference if Grimes is guarding Dennis Schroeder instead of Austin Reeves guarding Dennis Schroeder. So those are the biggest things. I think a coach that is more flexible, and it kind of shocked me how inflexible Steve Kerr was during this tournament. The fact that they didn't really change how they were defending ops to start running him off the 3-point line, and maybe at points in this game they were trying too hard. Like the dagger three that he hit, Halliburton fell down on because he was running so hard to go after him. Schwinn, friend of the pod, pointed on Twitter, like Kerr could have tried to top lock him, which would have just forced him to go inside the arc. That would have been pretty wise, and you wouldn't be behind chasing him constantly. There were strategic variations to do that. Again, I just struggled. I struggle to comprehend that Eric Spoelstra and Ty Lue, who are just two of the best at Spoelstra probably the best at in-game adjustments, Lue and Spoelstra, like probably the two best at adjustments over the course of a series. And this was sort of a series with Germany. Like we saw Caitlin Cooper, who does an incredible job covering the Pacers, noted the U.S.'s best lineup. Like when they came back down from 18 against Germany in the preliminaries, it was because they played Halliburton, Edwards, Reeves, Jaren Jackson Jr., and I'm struggling to remember who the fifth person was. But that was kind of the core of the lineup. And look, I still think you run into the same issues with defensive deficiencies there. Like the U.S. did make a run down the stretch of this game with that group out there because the offense was unguardable. And give Reeves credit, like the guy has like you know what's of steel. Like he makes big shots after big shot. And the U.S. was like, that probably was a fluke. And maybe it was because it was just one game. Like, I mean, some of this is small samples, but the point is more so that they generally refuse to adjust from the previous game, adjust over the course of this game. And to me, the single biggest thing, which I've noted throughout the tournament, was just the insistence on switching everything. So the U.S. will play Canada. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm assuming everyone plays to watch RJ Barrett compete with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. I'm really looking forward to watching it, and we will have coverage after that game. I think to me, the thing I'm watching for there is how motivated the U.S. comes out in that game. Because we saw, and I don't know if it was lack of motivation, but the U.S. fall to Serbia when they were playing for fifth place last World Cup, and it looked like a group that was pretty disinterested and down on themselves at that point. Does the U.S. come out and say, like, all right, like there's quote unquote still a medal on the line? And I think the fact that they're going up against so many NBA guys, and of course your north of the border neighbor might light a fire under them. But what version of the United States do we get? That's kind of what I'm curious to see. Is I think Canada, who's never finished close to this high before in the World Cup, is going to be playing their butts off. If the U.S. doesn't bring it, they're going to fall to fourth. But on that happy note, I'm Gavin Schall. Really appreciate you guys tuning in for this. I know it's not as Knicks oriented as what we always do on this show, probably from what a lot of you expect on this show, but I appreciate you all indulging me because I really love everything international basketball, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it too, despite the United States disappointing. Sean, we'll have coverage of one more game, and we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming. It's almost the middle of September. We're getting closer and closer. We're going to kick the season preview stuff into high gear. But until then, I'm Gavin Schall. Talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.